So, we are still going through the Sermon on the Mount here, and last week I think was the longest message I've ever preached here. And so you guys are due for a nice little 10-minute message. It won't be today because this is so important, but we will cut down from last week. It's just as Jesus is drawing to the close of the Sermon on the Mount, I don't know what could be more important. It's just, I mean, he comes, he draws this all to a head in a very serious way. And I mean, it's so important. And I don't know, I just think it's something that we should listen to intently. And it's hard for me to keep on time. But anyway, this morning we're looking at the narrow gate. And in Matthew 7:13, Jesus says, "Enter by the narrow gate." He says, "For wide is the gate, and easy is the way that leads to destruction." And he says, "Those that enter by it are many." He says that the wide gate, that many go down, he says there's sure a lot of elbow room in that way. There's sure a lot of ease and a lot of freedom, a lot of room to run in that way. There's a lot of people making a lot of decisions on that road, and he says many people are going down that road, and it's an easy road to travel. And he says, "For the gate is narrow, and the way is hard that leads to eternal life, and those that enter by it are few." So statistically speaking, not a lot of people enter into eternity. In the broad scale of things, not a lot of people are entering into the gate that leads to eternal life. Not very many people go that way. So what I picture here is, when we were in Mexico, I was kind of shocked. I mean, it was hot. I don't know what it was, 120 degrees or something. It was really hot. And one thing that shocked me, this has very little to do with this message, but this is just my vision, okay? So these soccer fields were insane. They had these guys out there with like comb and tooth picking through these soccer fields, and they were just lush and green. I mean, these were like, it was kind of like we got to play on them because we were at this resort, and I was like, wow, this is kind of like a golf green, kind of like that. It almost looked like indoor turf. I mean, how do you get grass like this? And I just picture that this is what Jesus is talking about, not about a soccer field, but he's talking about this. Oh, I did it again. I keep doing that. But he's talking about I picture this, that we're all going to cross this field, okay? We all must cross across this field. Everyone in their life, they're going to walk across this field. And he says that there's just this easy and lush way to walk across. I mean, when you're going to cross that field, I mean, you can walk wherever you want. There's a lot of room to go where you want. There's a lot of room to travel, right? And it's easy, and it's lush, and it's satisfying. It's great. It's very pleasurable to walk across this field. But he says, there in that field, there's no fences in it. In my envision of it, there's no fences, but there's a gate in that field. And he says there's a small gate, and on the other side of that small gate is a narrow path that's not as easy to walk. And he says, you must enter through that gate. You must enter through that narrow gate. And, I envision people saying, enter through this narrow gate. You must enter through this narrow gate. And I envision the world looking at them and thinking, but there's a lot of area to walk. Why do you judge me? Don't hate on me. Look at all the ways we can get across. There's a lot of ways to get across. Don't tell me that this is the only gate. Don't tell me I got to go through this gate. Don't tell me this is the only way to get across. Look at the wide open gate here. Look at the whole side of the field that's open to walk through. How lush and easy and pleasurable would that walk be? Why would you tell me I need to go through that gate? Why would you say that to me? This is what I'm visioning. So number one, he says that the gate that leads to eternal life is a small gate. It's a narrow gate. It's a narrow opening. And in John 10:7, it says, Jesus says to them, he says, "Again, I say to you that I am the door to the sheep." Jesus says, I am the gate. He says, I am the door. I am the way in. If my sheep want to enter, they must come through me. They're not going to be able to cut across the field anywhere else. They must come through me. And Jesus says again in John 10:9, he says, I am the door. And he says, if anyone enters by me, he will be saved. and he will go in, and he will go out, and he will find pasture. He says, salvation comes by entering through me. He says, I am the only way to get there. He says, I am the one way. If anybody thinks they're going to enter another way, they will not. I am the only way to enter in. And Jesus says, I think here in John 14:4, I think he overestimates his disciples' understanding of entering into heaven. He says in John 14:4, he says, you know the way to where I am going. And Thomas is like, what are you talking about? Thomas says, we don't even know where you're going. How can we know the way? You know, and he says, you know, you're talking about ascending. You're talking about, and like, you know, when he goes into the sky, they're like, how do we get there from here? What is the way? What is the road? We don't even know where you're going. How can we possibly know how to get there? And I don't know if you guys, you know, we grew up watching this movie, The Apple Dumpling Gang. I don't know if you've seen this movie, but it was like one of the only movies we had growing up. And so we watched it a lot. In fact, we watched it in slow motion. But it was one of those things when we were kids that this is the movie we had, so this is the movie we watched. We watched it over and over. But there's this scene where Don Knotts, his name in the movie is Theodore, and he's trying to rob a bank, and he's got his buddy on the other side of the bank, and they put a rope over the top of the bank. And it's hanging down on the other side in this dark alley, and he ties it around his waist, and he's waiting to get pulled up onto the roof of the bank. And he's standing there, and these three little kids walk past, and this little girl walks in. She's like, hey, what you doing? He's like, move along, move along. And then pretty soon the other kids come in. They're like, hey, what you looking at? And they come in, and they're all staring at him. And he's like, well, this is awkward. He's like, move along, go on, get on there. And the rope starts to tighten. And they're like, why are you standing on your toes like that? He's like, never mind why I'm standing on my toes. Move along, get out of here, you know. And pretty soon he lifts off the ground. And they're like, how'd you do that? And he's like, never mind how I did this. You guys just keep on going, you know. And then, whoop, he goes up, and they're like, we don't know where he went. How did he do that? Like, this is crazy. And I feel like this is a little bit where Thomas is. Thomas is like, what do you mean we know how to get there? How do you do that? We don't know the way from here to there. We don't even know where you went. We don't know where you're going. We don't know how to travel that road. We don't know how to get there. He said, you way overestimate us. We don't know. We don't know. And Jesus answers him, and he says to Thomas, says that Jesus said to Thomas, I am the way. I am the truth, and I am the life. He says, no one comes to the Father except by me. He says, I am the way. He says, you follow me, and you will enter into heaven. He says, I am the way to get to heaven. He says, following me, a relationship with me, coming to him. He says, he is the way to get to heaven. He is the door. Following him is the road to heaven. If you know Jesus Christ, and you accepted his forgiveness, that he has died and bled to pay for your sin, and you call out to him, he will bring you into eternity. He is the way. He is the road. He is the one who can take you in. So number one, there is a narrow gate. There is a small entryway, and that is the only way in. But secondly, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. This is where it gets very, very, very serious. And he says this. He says that the way that leads to destruction is wide. He says it's a wide road with a lot of room. You know, that word wide can mean there's a lot of room for zigzagging. There's a lot of room for lifestyle choices. There's a lot of room on that path to go wherever you good and well please. I mean, there's you can make whatever decisions you want on that road. And then he says this, he says the gate is narrow that leads to life. And he says, and the way is narrow. He says the way is difficult that leads to Christ. So he says the way that leads to destruction is so wide. But why? Why does he say that the way that leads to life is narrow? Why does he say that it's narrow? He says this word in the Greek is, can't even pronounce it, thebos or something like that. But it means it's straight. It's a straight and narrow path. And it means it has the idea of difficult to walk on. It's a hard walk. It's not like it's nothing like the wide road. That's what it means. It means that through the narrow gate is a straight and narrow path. Through the narrow gate is a path that's not got a lot of running room. And you know, this is where it gets difficult, because if you are talking to somebody and you're telling them, enter through the narrow gate, you must enter through Jesus Christ, what are you going to tell them about the path on the other side of that gate? What are you going to tell them? Because this is the thing. It's that whoever chooses this narrow gate must also choose the narrow path. He says, if you enter through the wide gate, you're going to have so much room. You're going to have so many choices, and it's going to be very pleasurable for you. You're going to have a lot of just satisfying choices to live how you want. But he says if you enter through this narrow gate, he says when you walk the straight and narrow road, he says it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard. So on that narrow gate is a warning. No wonder no one enters it. On that narrow gate is a warning that beyond this path, or beyond this gate, it's kind of simple math. Through the big gate is a big path. And through the narrow gate is a narrow, straight and narrow path. And he says if you enter through this gate, you'll be on the narrow path. And it's a very, if you're sharing the gospel with someone, what are you going to say to them? Are you going to warn them about the path on the other side of the gate? Are you going to tell them, enter through the narrow gate? Because, there's a lot of people in this world who say, I want to enter through that gate. Yes, I want to enter through that gate, but I also want to walk my way across the field in the lush green grass where I can make all my choices and run zigzag wherever I want. You see how they want to do two different things. And Jesus says here in Matthew, if we go just a little bit further, in Matthew 10:38, he says, whoever does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. He says, whoever does not take up the cross of self-denial is not worthy to walk this road with me. He says, if you're not willing to shoulder that cross that says, yes, I want to deny my passions, and I want to deny myself, he says, you're not worthy to walk the other side of this gate. But everybody says, I want to enter the gate, but they don't really care about what's the walk on the other side. But Jesus says, there's a choice to make. He says, do you want to run in the field, or you want to enter this gate that has the straight and narrow path on the other side? You gotta make this choice. And why does Jesus teach us about counting the cost? To see whether it's worth it. Counting the cost to see as whether we want to enter the narrow gate. Why do we need to count the cost if the gate is the only option? If you can enter the gate and walk in the wide, why would you count the cost? He says, if you're not willing to shoulder that cross, he says you're not worthy to walk the path. And so here, as we make our decisions, in the wide open gate, in that wide open path where the grass is green and lush and there's all the pleasures, where you can go over here and you can go over there. You can do what you want. You can live to the sensuality that you want. You can watch what you want. You can go to the parties you want. You can say the things you want. You can treat people the way you want. You can do what you want because there is so much room there. There's so much room for choices. I mean, doesn't it appeal to you? No wonder he says that the path on the side of the big gate is a really easy one to walk. Of course it's an easy one to walk because you suit your own pleasures. That sounds really appealing. No wonder everyone chooses it. But Jesus says here a little bit further in Matthew 16:24, it says, Jesus then, he told his disciples, if anyone does not pick up his cross and follow after me and deny himself, he cannot follow me. Jesus says, if you're doubting, if you're saying, wait a minute, maybe shouldering the cross to follow with him, maybe shouldering the cross to follow that path, maybe that doesn't mean living like him. Maybe that doesn't mean following him. Jesus says, listen, if you're going to shoulder your cross, I'm going to paint it out for you. You will deny your passions. You will deny running in the wide open field. He says, if you do not deny what you wanted to do, I mean, what is it? Whatever you wanted to do, like the life you want, the life of passion. He says, if you will not deny yourself and pick up that cross, you cannot walk the path with me. You cannot come through this gate if you don't want to shoulder that cross, the cross of self-denial, the cross of the choice of path. Then Jesus says here a little bit further, he says in Luke 9:23, Jesus says, then he said to all, he said to everyone, if anyone wants to come after me, he says, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Repentance is not a choice that you make once when you enter the gate. Jesus says, you know what? If you want to walk the straight and narrow path on the other side of this gate, he says, every day for the rest of your life, every day you'll wake up and you'll look out at that green, lush pasture through that giant gate. And every day you'll look out there and you'll think of all the lusts and the passions and the things that you want to live like and the lifestyle you want to live. every day you'll wake up and you'll look at that, and every day of your life you will bend down and you will pick up your cross every single day in denial and say, Lord, I want to walk this path with you. Every day of your life, for as long as you live, you will make the choice that, Lord, this is the path for me. Every day you'll deny running wide open in that field. Every day, if you want to walk the path on the other side of this gate, every day, if you want to walk along with him, you'll say, this is the choice for me, Lord. And every day you'll follow after him. And my kids, sometimes they'll be watching a movie and I'll say, kids, I'm going somewhere. I'm leaving. Do you want to come with me or not? And sometimes they sit there and they flounder a little bit, right? They say, we're watching a movie, Dad, and I shut the door, and 2 seconds later, boom, Dad, I'm coming with you. I've made a choice, I made a choice, I'm coming. And they're coming with me. And they made a choice. They made a choice of what they're going to do. They made a choice of who they're going to follow. And Jesus says, listen, everyone, if you want to follow me, every day of your life is going to be a choice. Every day of your life is going to be, do you want to follow me? You're not going to force you. He says, do you want to follow me? And every day of your life, you'll choose to pick up that cross and follow Jesus Christ. But I'll tell you that when you're following Jesus Christ, he's your Father. And every day you'll look up to him and you know that he loves you. And you'll say, Father, I love you as well. And every day you'll say, you know what? This isn't a path that I have to walk, but I love, it is not good out there. What sin brings, the trouble and hardship that a sinful life brings is not fun. It's not good. It's not where I want to be. You say, Father, I want to be with you. I want to walk this path. It's good to have obedience, because obedience is good things. And walking with you is good, Lord. And I love you and I want to walk with you. I want to walk the path with you, Lord. Every day of my life I want to. I don't want to go back. That's not a choice I want to make every day of my life. I choose you, Lord. And he says, and I know that you love me, Lord. It's a better life. It's a life I want to be on. It's a life that I want to live. It's a road that I want to walk. It's following him, something I want to do. And Jesus continues in the same passage in verse 24. And he says, whoever would save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will save his life. Jesus says, whoever looks out at that field and says, look at the fun they're having running wild, and says, that's not for me. That's not for me. I want to walk with you, Lord. I want to walk this straight and narrow path. And I'm going to shoulder the cross of self-denial every day of my life, and I'm going to walk with you. And he says, whoever chooses this life over that life will save his life for eternity. Whoever chooses his old life, whoever says, Lord, I want to run wild in the field, will lose his life. He'll die in that field, Jesus says. He'll die running out there. He didn't want to come through the gate at all. Maybe he wanted to enter through the gate, but he didn't want to walk the straight and narrow. No, he didn't. He chose, and he died in the field. Jesus says, if you choose that life, that's where you'll die. If you choose to deny that life, you will live on this path, and you will make it into my kingdom. And Jesus says in Mark 8:34, it says, calling to himself the crowds with his disciples, he said to them, and he says, listen, everybody. He says, everybody, listen, all you crowds, listen, all you people, come to me. Everybody needs to hear this, he says. I want every single person to gather around. All the crowds, come in and hear what I'm going to tell you, because I'm going to tell you something very important. And Jesus says this, he says, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Jesus says, I want everyone to hear this, okay? He says, if you want to follow me, if you want to follow my road, he says, every one of you needs to pick up his cross of self-denial and walk the path. He says, do you hear me? Do you hear me? Do you want to choose me? Do you love me? Who do you love? What is your choice going to be? Who do you love? Where do you want to walk? What is your choice, me or that? Do you want to stay or do you want to come? And Jesus says in John 12:25, he says, whoever loves his life will lose it. And whoever hates his life in this world will save his life for eternity. Jesus says, we studied this word hate a while back. And this word hate your life means that, remember when Jesus taught that you cannot serve two masters? That if you love one, that you'll neglect the other. Jesus says, if you do not love me so much that you neglect your life in this world, you will die in that field. But if you love me enough that you neglect the life, running wild in that field, in that world, following the passions of what you want to do, he says, you will save your life for eternity. He says, if you will walk this path with me. You know, the wide open gate is a self-guided tour. It really is. You can do whatever you good and well please, but if you want to walk with the Lord, he says, pick up your cross and walk with me. Walk the straight and narrow path. He says, that's the only way to follow me. Do you want to follow me or do you not want to follow me? It's a choice. It's not just the gate, it's the path beyond the gate. So, as we come to a close, do you know the gate? Do you know the way? Jesus Christ came to earth and he bled and died. He shed his blood to pay for our sin. He's offering us a free gift of full redemption that we do not deserve. And he says, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Do you want to come to the Father? Come with me. I'm offering you a full pardon that you didn't earn or deserve. And if you want to come with me, leave your television show. Run out the door and say, Dad, I'm coming. I'm coming. We can't get confused. A lot of people get so fixated on, it's this free gift. And Lord, I want to come through that narrow gate and receive the free gift so I can go and run in the field for the rest of my life. And he says, you know what? He says, do you want to come with me? Because I'm going this way. Do you want to? Are you coming with me, son? And you got to make a choice. He says, you've got to make a choice because beyond this gate is a straight and narrow path. And do you want to walk that path with me? Are you coming? And in that wide open path, there's so many lifestyles, there's so many choices, there's so much freedom, there's so much appeal. But we have to make a choice. We have to make the call of where we're going to follow and where we're going to go. And if you understand the gate, that is Jesus Christ. You understand that he swung that gate wide open by paying your debt and offering you a full pardon. And do you understand the path that is to shoulder a cross of self-denial? Do you understand that someone who's shouldering a cross of self-denial, who says, Father, I'm coming, doesn't do a lot of running in that wide open field? They really don't. Who runs around in the wide open field with the cross of self-denial on their back? He says, this is a path. It's a guided tour. You follow after him. And it's not that you have to. He says that you'll find that I'm worth it. You'll love me, and you look out at the world and you'll say, that's not what I want. I want to follow you, and I want to walk the path. So do you know the gate, and do you know the way? Pursue your Lord. Pursue him. He tells us, we just went through the Sermon on the Mount. He laid out the way. He says, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way, this is the way. Do you want to follow me? Do you want my way? It's a choice. And I hope that it's a choice that we all make. I hope it's a choice that we decide on. So let's close in prayer this morning. Our God and Father, we just thank you that you provided a gate, that you provided a